She froze when the mattress slammed against the dumpster. Vanessa's diamond bracelet clinked as she dusted her hands. "Good riddance," she hissed, not knowing the secret sewn inside. A fortune, hidden by her unfaithful husband, Richard, now lay abandoned in the night air. Blocks away, David pushed a rusty cart, his wife Grace trailing quietly behind. They were hungry, tired, broken. The fire had taken their home, and the world had forgotten them. When David's eyes caught the mattress leaning against the trash, he whispered, "Grace, look, this could be ours." She shook her head, weary. "It smells of trouble." But David's hands gripped the fabric with desperate hope. Neither of them knew that inside that stained mattress lay enough money to change not only their lives, but the lives of everyone they touched. And that's where her story truly began. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. Richard Sinclair sat in his gold-trimmed armchair, his tie loosened, his face flushed with the arrogance of power. The man who once rose from a small-town lawyer to one of the country's most feared politicians now had more money than he could ever spend. Or so it seemed. The problem wasn't the wealth itself, it was where to hide it. Bank accounts could be traced. Overseas shells could collapse. But no one would suspect an old mattress, stitched and stuffed with bricks of cash, lying quietly in the guest room of his mansion. To him, it was genius. To others, it would one day look like folly. That evening, the house reeked of tension. Vanessa Sinclair, tall, elegant, and weary from years of pretending, stood by the window clutching a half-empty wine glass. She had endured the parties, the headlines, the whispers of mistresses. But tonight, her patience had run out. "Richard," she said, her voice sharp, "do you think I don't know where you disappear to every Thursday? Do you think your perfume-soaked suits lie?" Richard smirked, the kind of smirk that had ruined more lives than one. "Vanessa, you've lived well because of me. The cars, the vacations, the diamonds, all because I know how to play the game. Don't bite the hand that feeds you." Her chest rose, her heart hammering. "Feed me? You think this is feeding? You think parading your filth in public while I stand like a mannequin in the background is life?" The glass slipped from her trembling hand, shattering across the marble. For a moment, silence followed, except for the ticking of the grand clock in the hall. Then Vanessa's anger erupted. She stormed into the guest room, grabbed the heavy mattress, and with a strength born of fury, dragged it toward the balcony. Richard shouted after her, but she was deaf to him now. The mattress scraped against the floor, thudding, until she reached the edge. "Here's your kingdom," she spat, shoving it over the railing. It landed with a dull crash by the dumpster outside the mansion gates. Neither of them noticed the faint sound of bills shifting inside, like dry leaves brushing together. Neither of them cared. Richard was too busy cursing her recklessness, and Vanessa was too consumed with years of betrayal boiling out in one act of vengeance. Hours later, the streets outside the Sinclair mansion grew quiet. The lamps flickered. A stray dog padded near the discarded mattress, sniffing at its edges. Fate, silent and patient, waited for the right pair of eyes to see it. And that pair belonged to David. David once wore sharp suits and held boardroom keys. He had managed accounts worth millions before the market crash took his job. Then the fire stripped away his home. Now, he shuffled through alleys with a bent back, pushing a cart that rattled louder than his heart. Beside him, Grace walked with a scarf over her hair, her eyes carrying both exhaustion and faith. She still smiled at him sometimes, though those smiles were smaller than before. When David spotted the mattress against the dumpster, his chest tightened. He had slept on cold pavement for months. The sight of something soft, even discarded, felt like a miracle. "Grace," he whispered, tugging her sleeve. "Look at this. God hasn't forgotten us." Grace frowned. "It's trash, David. Filthy. Probably crawling with things we don't want." But he touched it, pressing his palm to the fabric. Yes, it smelled faintly of wine and smoke, but beneath that, he felt sturdiness, comfort, a chance. "Let's take it," he pleaded. We'll clean it. Tonight we won't sleep on stone. She hesitated, then sighed. Fine. But if it brings us trouble, remember? I warned you. Together they hauled it onto their cart, its weight far heavier than a normal mattress. They assumed it was soaked with damp or stuff too thick. Neither of them guessed it carried more money than they had ever seen in their lives. As they pushed it through the quiet streets, Richard and Vanessa's mansion windows still glowed in the distance. Inside, Richard poured another drink, pacing in circles, still cursing his wife. Vanessa sat with her head in her hands, tears streaking her makeup, wondering if she had destroyed more than just her pride. And outside, under the indifferent moonlight, destiny was already shifting. The mattress had left one life and entered another. Soon it would decide the future of both. But for now, all that mattered was that David and Grace had hope again. Hope sewn secretly into the seams of someone else's greed. The night air was heavy when David and Grace dragged the mattress to their little shelter under the broken awning of an abandoned shop. Their arms ached, but their spirits lifted. David spread a tattered blanket across it with the pride of a man furnishing a palace. For the first time in months, they lay side by side without feeling the stones dig into their backs. Grace, though reluctant, admitted quietly, "It does feel softer than I imagined." David chuckled, holding her close. "I told you, one man's trash is another man's miracle." Sleep came swiftly, wrapping them in a kind of peace they had forgotten. But morning brought something stranger. As Grace adjusted the blanket, her fingers brushed against a seam that felt oddly thick. She frowned, tracing it. The stitches were uneven, not like ordinary factory work. Curiosity pricked at her. She pressed harder, and something crinkled inside. Not foam, not spring, something else. "David," she whispered, shaking him awake. "There's something in here." He groaned, half asleep. "Probably old rags. Ignore it." But Grace's hands were persistent. She fetched the small knife they used for cutting bread and slit the corner of the fabric. Out spilled the first clue to a new life, bundles of crisp, folded bills, wrapped tight in faded bands. Her breath caught. The world seemed to freeze. She touched the money as though it might vanish if she blinked too long. "David," she gasped. "Look!" His eyes snapped open. When he saw it, he sat up too quickly, hitting his head on the wall. He didn't even wince. "No, no, this can't be real." "It's real," she whispered, voice trembling. "It's all money, hidden inside." He grabbed a handful, staring at the notes with disbelief. The colors, the numbers, everything screamed authenticity. He laughed, then stopped, then laughed again, tears burning the corners of his eyes. "Grace, do you know what this means? We're not lost anymore. We can start again." But her joy was tempered. Her lips tightened. "David, wait. This isn't normal money. Someone hid it here. People don't just stuff fortunes into mattresses. What if it belongs to criminals? What if we're caught?" He reached for her hand, still clutching bills. "Grace, we've begged for bread. We've slept in rain. We've been forgotten. Whoever hid this didn't care enough to guard it. Maybe God put it here for us. We can be wise with it. Careful. Not greedy." Her eyes searched his face. She wanted to believe. She wanted to trust that this wasn't a trap. Slowly, she nodded, though her heart still thudded with fear. That day, they didn't touch the bundles again. They sat together, whispering plans into the morning air. "We could rent a small room first," David said, "just to have a safe roof. And clothes," Grace added. "Decent ones, so people don't look at us like ghosts." "Yes," David said, hope swelling. "And food. Not scraps. A real meal. And then, a small business. Something steady." The dream grew between them like a fragile seedling, watered by possibility. For the first time since the fire, Grace saw light in her husband's eyes. It made her chest ache with both fear and longing. Still, practical as ever, she insisted on hiding the money carefully. They stitched the corner shut again, leaving only a little they dared to spend. That evening, they walked into a diner where no one stared at them with pity. They ordered hot soup, bread, roasted chicken. Grace closed her eyes as she tasted the broth, tears slipping down her cheeks. David reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "This is just the beginning," he said. The following weeks transformed their lives quietly, step by careful step. They rented a single-room apartment in a modest neighborhood. Grace cleaned it until the walls smelled of soap and sunlight. David found a second-hand suit, pressed and neat. With some of the money, he bought a pushcart and began selling roasted corn by the roadside. Customers liked his easy smile and honest words. Soon, lines formed. Grace helped, tying packets neatly, keeping the coins counted. The mattress still lay in their small room, silent, heavy with secrets. Grace often looked at it with unease. Sometimes at night she whispered, "David, what if someone comes for it? What if they find us?" But he always answered calmly, "We'll use it wisely, Grace, not foolishly. We'll turn it into something good." And so they did. Little by little they expanded. A second cart, then a small stall. Grace, skilled with her hands, began sewing clothes from fabric they purchased. Her designs caught eyes, and soon neighbors asked for more. Their names began to carry respect again, not pity. All the while, they remained cautious, spending in small amounts, avoiding attention. Yet fate had its own clock, ticking in the background. The mattress was more than just fabric and springs. It was a bridge between two worlds. On one side, Richard and Vanessa, whose choices had thrown it away. On the other, David and Grace, who treated it as a blessing, not a toy. And destiny was not finished with either of them. Richard Sinclair's empire began to unravel the same way a loose thread ruins a fine suit. Slowly at first, then all at once. His rivals smelled weakness. His party colleagues whispered about scandals. Business partners who once toasted to his power now avoided his calls. The mattress he had trusted as his vault of secrets was gone. And with it, the fortune that kept his world spinning. Vanessa watched him crumble with a mixture of bitterness and sorrow. She had loved him once, before the arrogance, before the endless mistresses. When she threw that mattress out in rage, she had no idea she had flung away his lifeline too. Now he paced their mansion with wild eyes, shouting at servants, slamming doors, drinking more than he ate. One night he broke down, slumping at the edge of their empty pool. "Vanessa," he muttered, voice raw, "you ruined me. Do you understand? That mattress held everything. Every last note." Her hand flew to her mouth. She stared at him, her heart sinking. "You mean money? You hid money there. All of it?" he bellowed, clutching his head. "The contracts, the bribes, the payoffs, I couldn't risk the banks. I thought it was safe." Vanessa staggered back, her knees weak. Guilt burned her chest. But something else came to clarity. The years of luxury had been built on lies, filth disguised as gold. The mattress wasn't just gone. So was the life she had once thought she wanted. Soon the cars were sold. The mansion was mortgaged. Invitations dried up. And as Richard cursed fate, Vanessa picked up a needle and thread again, returning to the quiet craft of sewing she had abandoned in her youth. At first it was humiliation, but slowly it became therapy. Her fingers stitched peace into fabric where her heart found none. When customers came, they admired her skill, not her jewels. For the first time in years, Vanessa felt useful, even human. Richard resisted. He railed against the fall. But eventually, hunger and reality bent him. Together, they opened a small tailoring shop. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't powerful. But it was theirs. Meanwhile, across town, David and Grace's world blossomed like spring after a long winter. Their roadside corn business grew into a modest food stall, then into a small restaurant. Grace's sewing turned into a boutique. With discipline, they invested in land, just small plots at first, then more as the money stretched. Their neighbors noticed. "You've come far," an old woman said one day as Grace handed her a bag of flour. "But you still treat us like family." Grace smiled softly. "We were hungry once too. We know what it feels like." David's heart swelled with pride. He had feared that sudden fortune might twist him into greed, but instead it deepened his gratitude. They lived modestly, choosing not to flaunt wealth but to use it. They built a scholarship fund for children who couldn't pay school fees. They donated food. Vanessa, I see it now. All my wealth was dust. I never cherished what mattered. She looked at him, eyes tired but softer than before. Then perhaps this is our second chance. Not to be rich, but to be real. And so two roads diverged from the same mattress. One couple fell, then learned to stand again on simpler ground. The other rose not because of luck alone, but because of wisdom, patience, and faith. The mattress had been just fabric and springs once. But in truth, it was a mirror, revealing who people became when faced with fortune or loss. Richard and Vanessa found humility in ruin. David and Grace found prosperity in kindness. Both learned that wealth is not measured by how much one hides, but by how much one gives. Moral of the story: fate had stitched a strange tale through that discarded mattress. For Richard and Vanessa, it became a symbol of pride wasted and humility rediscovered. For David and Grace, it became the vessel of hope that lifted them from dust to dignity. In the end, both couples learned the same truth: money itself is powerless. It is the choices made with it that shape destiny. A fortune can destroy or rebuild, but character decides which way it turns. If this story touched you, like this video, subscribe to King's Folklore, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters.